James is an Australian novelist, and he flies out with his wife Em for a vacation in a small country called Tolka. The place has a modern surface, but it also holds on to old traditions that supposedly exist nowhere else in the world. That's exactly why James picks it. He is hoping the strangeness of the country will shake something loose in him. They stay at a resort called Pakalka, and after a few days the guests are invited down for breakfast. Right away something feels wrong. The musicians playing for the tourists are wearing terrifying carved masks called eki, and resort staff are painting marks onto the cheeks of some of the guests, the same marks worn by the native people of Tolka. James is still a new novelist, but even here he runs into a fan. Her name is Gabby, and she is there with her husband Albert. They get to know each other quickly, and Gabby invites James and Em to dinner at a Chinese restaurant, just the four of them. James agrees. Over dinner they talk about everything. Albert turns out to be a successful architect, and Gabby works as an actress in commercials. Gabby asks when James's next book is coming out, and he admits he has lost confidence in his own writing. That is the entire reason he came to Tolka, to hunt for inspiration. By the end of the night, it is obvious that Gabby is interested in James. They dance, she keeps holding his gaze, and Albert quietly pulls them aside for a private conversation of his own. The next day, the four of them go out together again, this time in a rental car that belongs to Mr. Dro, one of the Pakalka staff members. They are heading somewhere the resort has specifically told guests to avoid. Em is nervous about it. The tourist areas are beautiful and well-maintained, but outside those borders, Tolka is a poor country, and she assumes it gets dangerous fast. The gate at the resort border opens, and they drive out past the homes of the local people until they reach a quiet beach. They grill some food. Albert and Em fall into conversation, and James steps away to relieve himself. Out of nowhere, Gabby walks up to him and touches him intimately without saying a single word. That night they drive back to the resort. Em, Gabby, and Albert all fall asleep, so James takes the wheel. He can barely concentrate. He is still stunned by what Gabby did. Then the headlights suddenly cut out, and the moment he reaches to switch them back on, the car slams into a man on the road. Everyone wakes up. James and Em panic because the man is dead. James wants to call the police, but Gabby refuses. She insists they drive straight back to Pakalka and tell no one. According to her, the prisons in Tolka are brutal beyond imagination, and people get killed and thrown out like garbage. At the heavily guarded border gate, Gabby and Albert work on the security officers, claiming the four of them were just drunk and wandered outside by accident. It works. Albert and James show their room cards and they are let back in. They make it to the hotel that night without raising suspicion. This is Infinity Pool. The next morning, the authorities come for James. He and Em are both taken to the police station, and the moment they arrive, Em is pulled into a separate room. James is handed a change of clothes, but it is not a prisoner's uniform. It is a patient's gown. That is when he meets Detective Iral Thresh, who happens to be the nephew of Mr. Dro, the man who rented them the car. Before the interrogation even starts, Iral tells James to hide the fact that his uncle rented that vehicle, so Dro does not get punished by the Tolka police. Then Iral explains the situation. According to the testimony given by Gabby and Albert, it was James and Em who stole the car, drove out to the beach, ran down a local man, and fled the scene. The dead man's name is Amar. Gabby and Albert were there the entire time, and they have handed over a completely false statement. Under Tolka's federal law, a killer has to be executed, and the execution must be carried out by the victim's eldest child. Amar's eldest child is a boy of 13. James starts shaking, but there is a second option, one that exists specifically for tourists and diplomats. They can pay a large sum of money to have themselves perfectly cloned, down to every memory and every thought. The clone takes the place of the original and gets executed instead. James is so terrified that he agrees on the spot, even though he barely understands what he is agreeing to. He signs the execution agreement, then walks over to an ATM that is somehow sitting inside the prison and pays the cloning fee. 3 staff members come in, strip him, fit a hood over his head, and hold his mouth open. Then he is sent into a strange room that looks like a bathroom, except red liquid is pooling across the floor tiles. The cloning process begins. Hours later, James wakes up in a bed with Em beside him. She tells him the clone has been made perfectly. Still weak, he leans on her as they walk to a special room to look at it, and what they see leaves them stunned. It is an exact copy of him, down to the smallest detail. Iral then informs them that they are both required to attend the execution, and it is happening that same day. The clone is tied up in a room guarded by 2 officers, while James, M, and a crowd of spectators watch. It does not feel like justice. It feels like a show that people showed up to enjoy. Imar's son arrives, and the boy stabs the clone in the stomach over and over until it stops moving. Afterward, the body is cremated, and Iral hands James the ashes as a souvenir of Litolka. The couple is released, and a car takes them back to the resort. Enem is now more frightened of this country than ever. The masks, the way Gabby and Albert behaved, and a death penalty you can buy your way out of with a clone. She does not want to wait around. She books a flight back to Australia for the next day and starts packing. James does not move. He sits in silence, replaying the execution in his head. And somehow it makes him more curious about Litolka, not less. He decides he wants to stay. So he lies to M, telling her he cannot find his passport and promises to follow her home as soon as it turns up. M cancels her flight and extends their stay by a week because she still wants to be with him. Soon after, James runs into Gabby again, and she tells him the truth about herself. She and Albert have been cloned too, and their clones were executed just like his. Albert's crime was a swimming pool he designed in Litolka, one with a flaw that got 2 workers killed. Then Gabby invites James to her villa to meet a small community of tourists. These people deliberately commit crimes in Litolka so they can watch their own clones die. Once a year, they gather here and run the whole cycle again, purely for entertainment. They treat the law of this country as a toy, and they will happily kill someone just for the thrill of it. There are no limits with this group, including their marriages. Albert barely reacts when his own wife kisses James in front of the entire room. Because they know James has extended his stay over a missing passport, one member of the community promises to get it back for him, but there is a condition. James has to take part in that night's game. They are planning to storm the home of another resort owner in Tolka and steal a Medal of Honor kept inside. This is going to get violent because they have already taken a pistol from a local security guard. Nobody looks nervous because getting caught is the entire point. That is how they earn the right to pay and watch themselves die all over again. James, already catching the same madness, agrees to join. Before they go, they break into a souvenir shop and steal traditional eki masks just to look more terrifying. At the house, James tackles the guard while the rest of the group tears through the place looking for the medal, grabbing anything valuable and dragging out 2 more people, including the owner of the home, a man named Kovac. Gabby dares James to prove himself by shooting Kovac in the head. James raises the gun, but he cannot do it. He still cannot bring himself to commit a real crime, let alone kill a man. Then one of the home's security guards appears and opens fire on Gabby, Albert, and James. In the chaos, everyone living in the house ends up dead, and Albert takes a bullet in the right thigh. Albert needs help fast, so James brings the entire group back to his hotel room. M, who knows nothing about any of this, becomes hysterical at the sight of her husband showing up with these people in that condition. Then the film cuts to the prison, where the clones of James, Gabby, Albert, and the rest of the group are sitting around chatting like it is a normal day, with no idea they are copies. Iral arrives with a squad of guards and drags them off to be executed. None of the victims in this case had a son, so the prison guards will carry out the killings instead. Once again, the real versions are required to watch. And this time, James and his unhinged friends laugh with delight as they watch themselves die. The same man who was shattered by the first execution now enjoys the second one, taking a strange satisfaction in seeing his clone stabbed to death. James goes back to his room and finds Em packed and ready to fly home. She asks how he became someone so completely different. James barely responds. Holding the urn with his second batch of ashes, he tells her to go home and not to dig into whatever he is doing. He does not feel guilty. He sinks deeper into the vacation. He and his new friends get high on a traditional Tolkien herb, something powerfully intoxicating, and lose themselves in it. Then they pull him into another crime. They keep a red cloth over the prisoner's head the entire time. And as the newest member of the group, James is told to breathe in the herb first, then torture the man until he dies. James beats him savagely while his friends watch, laughing and clapping. Then Gabby pulls the red cloth off, and James's face changes instantly, because the man underneath the hood is his own clone. Gabby and her friends paid the police to make another clone of James, specifically so that James would be the one to kill it. He runs. He locks himself in his hotel room and spirals into a full existential crisis, because he is now terrified that his friends have been playing him from the start. What if the one he just tortured was the real James? What if it is all reversed and he is the clone, and the original just died at his hands? The memories are identical. The personalities are identical. Nobody could ever tell the difference. He finally pulls himself together the next day. He grabs his passport, which it turns out he had been hiding under the bathroom sink himself the entire time, and rushes off to catch a bus to the airport. But on the way, the bus is stopped by Gabby and her crew. They threaten to kill every passenger on board if James does not get off. Gabby screams his name, and with everyone's life on the line, James gives in and steps off the bus. Lounging on the hood of a car, Gabby tells him the truth. She and her friends never accepted him into their community. They only ever saw him as a joke. She was never a fan of his either. She never read a single one of his novels. James was nothing more than one more piece of entertainment in their vacation. Cornered, James finally finds the nerve to fight back when Gabby's wine bottle slips out of her hand. He lunges for the pistol, but there are too many of them, and he cannot get it. So he runs into the forest while Gabby fires after him. He takes a bullet in the right thigh, but keeps stumbling forward with no direction until night falls, and he collapses in a field near some local homes. He wakes up inside one of those homes, but he has been given a drug that brings on hallucinations. He comes face to face with the boy who executed his first clone, the son of the man he killed on the road. And underneath it all, his subconscious is drowning in guilt about M, because he chose these people over his wife, and they only ever treated him as a joke. When he comes back to his senses, he goes outside looking for help and finds Gabby and her gang already waiting for him. Gabby explains just how far this goes. She says she and her community have been trying to mold James into someone braver, someone who will not hesitate when a decision has to be made. Then she releases her dog to fight him to the death. And of course, the dog is another clone of James, raised and treated like an animal. He started this vacation watching his clone get executed. Now he has to fight a version of himself on all fours. The fight is savage. James kills the clone with his bare hands, crushing its skull in the most vicious way imaginable. The moment it is over, he breaks down because he has just killed someone, and not just anyone, but himself. Gabby walks over, wraps her arms around him, and cradles him like a baby. The next day, James calls M and apologizes for pushing her aside. After that, James, Gabby, Albert, and the rest of the group board a bus to the airport as if nothing ever happened. They greet each other like ordinary people. No guns, no taunting, and not one word about anything they did together. But James cannot come back from it. After everything in Tolka, and especially after killing his own clone with his bare hands, the existential dread swallows him. He cannot stop thinking that the one he killed might have been the real him. Every time he went through the cloning process, he was unconscious for a long stretch, and there is no way to prove that the James sitting on that bus is the original. In the end, he does not fly home to Australia at all. He goes back to the now-closed Pakalka resort, sits there alone in the pouring rain, and stays with his own thoughts. So the moral of the story is, if a vacation package offers cloning, murder tourism, existential crises, and free souvenir ashes, just stick to taking beach photos and complaining about the hotel breakfast.